Hello, and welcome to the Balance Systems workshop. I am so excited that you're here. And I just want to say thank you. I know that you are busy moms and you don't have a lot of time. So I am so appreciative and honored that you are choosing to spend your time with me and learning some of these systems. So, as a thank you, later on in the workshop, I'm going to share with you a little bit about the Burnout to Balance program and give you a little bonus. So, stick around, don't miss it. So, I wanted to just share that I have been where you're at. I know what it's like to feel, overwhelmed and burned out and like you just don't have enough hours in the day and are, desperate for some kind of relief and wondering, how do other moms do it or what's wrong with me that I can't figure all this out? So I've been there, you're in good hands. A little bit about me, really quick, just why you should listen to me and what I have to say. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been working in the mental health field for over 20 years, which makes me feel old. I have, as of this month, been in private practice for 10 years. And I expanded to a group practice in 2021, hired my first employee. Now there are six of us and an intern. So we've got a good little group. I'm the mom of two boys. I have three bonus kiddos and a cat, Dave. I call him the goat of cats because he's pretty awesome. And another thing about me that I think you all can relate to is I am a recovering people pleasing perfectionist. I have some relapses here and there. I definitely felt that perfectionism, creating this workshop and trying to make sure, that I got all the things and wanted to really provide value. You know, if you've been in other webinars or workshops, it can feel a little more salesy and like they're trying to pitch you something and not a lot of goodness and actual things you can walk away with. So, I'm keeping that in mind throughout this. So I'm definitely going to spend more time on why you're here, learning these systems and sharing what works for me. And so that'll be kind of our focus. I love this quote by Amy Poehler. Depending on the day, it either makes me angry or kind of sad, but it's so true that there are things that we are programmed with or messages we're giving as young girls that, we're not enough or we're too much or do it this way, do it that way. And we just have to unlearn all of those things. And that is a big chunk of the burnout to balance philosophy and the whole, balance mindset is a module in the 8-week program. So I put a lot of emphasis on that, but that is a workshop for another day on how to kind of unlearn these things and not feel so sorry or all this shame that we're not measuring up. So I wanted just to share some pictures with you of my kind of mom journey, and unlearning some of those things. You can see the circa 1990s selfie, and these fun pictures with my kids. There's Dave, the goat of cats. So I think a lot of moms are under or were, given this misconception that we just don't have enough time, like there's not enough hours in the day. And I do think that our time is limited and scarce. It's a non-renewable resource. However, I don't think we need more hours in the day, but for moms, we need fewer obligations that drain us. And so you'll hear me talk throughout, this workshop and all the other content about really prioritizing your time, money, and energy, that mental energy. We have that mother load that we carry. And so if we can, have fewer of those obligations that drain us and weigh on us, and really being able to prioritize and not feel like it's selfish, then we can accomplish the things that we want and have the life that we want. So let's get to it. As I said, you can have it all, but we have to define what that looks like for us. Every family is different. Our kids are different, whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent, whether you work a 9 to 5 or you're self-employed, whatever it is, you have to define all based on what is important to you and how and what's going to work best for your family and your life. So a little just walk through of what all we're covered today. I'll kind of share with you my story and how, I went from being overwhelmed and burned out to, from that surviving to thriving, and what I really learned works for me and other moms. We'll talk about how it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's probably your systems and how, again, you're getting organized around your time, money, and energy, so those are not completely depleted resources. And then we'll go into what those systems are today, the two that we're covering. And then we'll do the little giveaway and have time for questions at the end. Whatever you want to ask about, how I use my systems, what they are, how I manage my own time, money, and energy, we'll have time for that at the end. So my story here, it was 2015. Imagine my kids were 2 and 5, like 2.5, 5 years old. And I was working in community mental health. So I had a 9 to 5, getting the kids off to daycare, rushing around in the morning, trying to get to work, working all day. It was one of those kind of overworked, underpaid positions where, you always felt like you were kind of scrambling to do the good clinical work, but then, at the end of the day, rushing back to get the kids at daycare. The evenings were just kind of a blur of dinner and bath time and, trying to play and hang out, and then bedtime, right? Only to do it all over again. And it was just, felt like the movie Groundhog Day, not really, again, not really thriving, just feeling like we were rats in a race. And then one day I was offered to sublet some office space and had the opportunity to open my own practice. And I was so excited. I thought, I'm going to have all this time and we're going to be able to, we could take my youngest out of daycare. So there, save that expense. And I was going to get to hang out with him and volunteer at my oldest school. He was in kindergarten, and, be able to do the laundry and plan, healthy meals and grow this business. And it was going to be great. And I was really excited. So these are some pictures of my first office, first business card. And so, I was just really looking forward to it. And, when I look back now, I can see that there was a lot of like anxiety, and just struggling to balance, growing this business that I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about accounting or marketing or taxes or legal structures. I didn't know anything about that. And so, while it was so great to be able to go to like the field trips and take the kids to the library and do things, I look back now and realize that there was a lot of just insecurity and doubt. And so, everything looked great on the outside, but I was struggling, and I found myself, you know, getting frustrated, snapping, feeling overwhelmed, trying to stay up late after the kids went to bed to just grow this business because, we needed shoes, and I wanted to provide them a life, where we weren't struggling. And so, I was hustling, but it just emotionally and mentally, I was overwhelmed and just couldn't make it happen, and really beating myself up, and I just didn't understand like why it wasn't working. And so, I feel fortunate as a therapist that like I could slow down and pause and reflect on what was really going on. I love this quote by Brene Brown: "Only when we're brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light." And so I started to, ask myself like, why do I feel this way? What am I thinking? What's going through my mind? And I figured out that like there was a lot of perfectionism and imposter syndrome and just fear and insecurity and doubt and anxiety, and I realized the way that I was talking to myself was not nice, and was really part of that mental drain, because I just was spinning my wheels and not getting anywhere and beating myself up. And that's, kind of the mindset side of it, but also, kind of on the productivity and organization side, which we're focusing on today. I was struggling to prioritize and figure out what I needed to do when, and what I needed to get done and how to get it done, and also entertain this 2.5-year old, and try to network. So I really started to kind of just explore within myself what was happening, and why was I stuck. And so I kind of turned those, all those struggles into like this superpower to kind of figure out, what do I need to do? And, at that time, I looked at the mindset piece, and I looked at the organization piece, and a lot of the systems and ways that I was able to change and grow and thrive um, eventually became the lessons and the concepts in the Burnout to Balance program. And when I started to do all of that, I felt more in control. I started to find a good balance between, work and home, being able to get those things done at home, and be intentional, and be present, and also find some traction and some confidence in being a business owner, and growing even as a therapist. And so I really started to see that shift and that difference, um, in my own, just in my mood. I felt better and more at ease when I was trying to focus on the family. I wasn't stressing about the business anymore, and the work stuff. And then when I was at work, I was able to really hone in on what I needed to do and get that done. Um, you know, I I felt like I was actually getting somewhere, and I was starting to enjoy, both sides of that balance even more. And so, I realized that I wasn't alone. I had talked with a mentor of mine at the time, like, hey, I'm kind of struggling to get this going. And he was a lovely guy, older gentleman, you know, much older than me. His kids were already grown, and while his suggestions were helpful, they didn't really work for where I was at, being a mom with young kids. And so, I realized like I had to figure it out for myself. And then in my practice, some of the mom clients I had, or talking to my friends and other therapist friends who are also moms, I realized like, hey, they were struggling with this stuff too. They were overwhelmed and didn't feel like they were able to get everything done and didn't feel like they were present with their children and they were losing their shit. And so I was like, hey, well, I've been able to figure all this out for me. Maybe it'll work for other moms. And so, that's when I kind of decided, like, how can I reach other women and other moms beyond just the therapy room? This hour on the couch is great, and especially if you have trauma, but these other things of being able to shed or unburden from some of these unrealistic expectations, and also create systems and structure our lives how we want. Like, I need to be able to reach more moms. And so coaching and being able to offer these online products and services were really the way to go. So I could take that expertise as a therapist and that personal experience as a mom and kind of put them together. And so that's when I decided, to add in this life coaching and create this thing. That's one of my first domains, Busy Moms Life Coach. And I started looking even more at, like, this concept of the mother load and mom burnout, and just really what moms were facing. And some of the information, it was sad and kind of made me angry, that I knew that moms were, like, for example, twice as likely as dads to be carrying this mental load. I saw that in my first marriage, and my husband at the time, he was a very involved dad, but there were still just things that, like, fell on my plate, and were kind of overloading me. And so I knew that this was a thing, and I was hearing from other moms about it. So I really was motivated to get this idea out into the world and start making a difference for other moms. So I was, frantically creating, all these lessons. These are some of the ideas that I had early on, and still have many of them in the Burnout to Balance program to this day. And so I wanted to really create um, create something that would speak to where moms are at and what they were going through, and actually give them some immediate results and shifts, not only in marking things off their to-do list, but also in that, like, mental load and how they felt about themselves. So the first system that I want to talk to you about today is the weekly planning session. And now, this is not some novel idea I came up with. I think a lot of people know that planning is important, and sitting down and kind of looking at your week is important. But I think one of the reasons why, like I said, it's not you that is the problem of why you're struggling and feeling burned out. It's your systems. And I think, while there are so many good life hacks and productivity hacks and guides out there, like Atomic Habits and things like that, I just don't think they're tailored enough to what it's like to be a mom, and thinking about that mental load, and really prioritizing, and looking at how are things, draining or using up my time, money, and energy. And so, the weekly planning session takes that into consideration, and that's why it's tailored to moms. So before we go into these two systems, there's a little bit of vocabulary that I want you to know, because I'll be using these terms. So and this is, again, how we tailor this to moms. There are the must-dos. So these are the things only you can do. Only you can go to the dentist. You have to be the one getting your hair cut. No one can do that for you. So you must do these. Now, the have-tos, anyone can do. You don't have to be the one doing them, like errands or paying the bills or grocery shopping. And then the want-tos. So these are the most important, actually. They are what balance out and help prevent burning out by doing all the must do's and have to's. So you can imagine, and maybe this is what life feels like right now, that you're just drowning in must do's and have to's, and you don't have the time, or it's easy to kind of sacrifice that time for you and what you want to do, and doing all maybe the have to's or the must do's. So these are the things that you want to do, like a girls' night out, or your hobbies, or just sitting in a quiet room by yourself with a cup of tea. It doesn't matter what it is. These are the things that fill your cup. And I'll do a little small lecture on self-care. I know we hear that all the time, just get a massage or whatever. But I want you to think about want tos again in that, through that lens of what is going to really recharge my mental energy. What is going to be the best bang for my buck? And what do I need in this moment to really help me balance out all of these other to-dos that are on my plate? So these are just some words to keep in mind, concepts to keep in mind, because you'll hear me referring back to them and talking about them as we go through these two systems. So here is like how I do my weekly planning session. And so I find that on Sundays is the best day that for me to do this. I can, look at the week ahead, look kind of Monday through Saturday at what's going on. And I'll show you a picture, a screenshot of my calendar and what I'm visualizing. But that first step is I'm kind of looking at the week ahead. I'm in bed with, husband, a cup of coffee, and my calendar. It's early. The kids aren't up yet. So I've got that uninterrupted time to just process and think and focus. And so the first thing I do is I'm looking at my calendar, and I'm kind of seeing, what's the week look like? Is it typical? Are there any events or, must-dos or have-tos coming up that kind of aren't routine, or they might need some extra prep, or maybe there's, something we're doing on the weekend that I need to run an errand for during the week. So I'm getting that mental picture of what the week's going to look like. I will even, look at the weather to kind of see, is it going to be crappy? Like, is there a good day that the weather's going to be nice if I have to do outside stuff, or if I've got to run around a lot of errands, getting in and out of the car? I don't want to do that in the pouring rain or when it's like, freezing ass cold outside. So I even kind of look at the weather when I'm thinking about my time and energy. The next thing that we do in the meal plan, the next thing we do in the weekly planning session is the meal planning. And the reason I do that first is because after this little planning session in the morning, we go straight to the grocery store. So that's why I do that first. We're thinking about, again, if I'm looking at the week, how much time and energy am I actually going to have at the end of the day to prep a meal and do that cooking? So like a couple weeks ago, for example, I had to work all day on a Wednesday, and we had a track meet. And those, if you're a track parent, then you know that the schedule is loose. You don't know how long things are going to take. You could be sitting out at the track for much longer than you anticipate. And so there's just no time to make a meal like from start to finish. You need something quick and easy. So as you're going through your planning session, look at those things and kind of see, am I going to be busy? Am I probably going to be tired? And make it easy on yourself. We will also on Sundays do some of the meal prep, like chopping of all the onions and peppers, or cooking any meat and protein ahead of time. So then it's pretty easy to throw it into a one pot meal or one pan recipe. And so I'm thinking about that as I'm doing this weekly planning session, so I can do myself a favor later in the week and not overload the day or the evening. So those are kind of the first guiding steps of how we do our weekly planning session. You know, we're also with that meal plan, like adding the ingredients to the smart speaker list. And so then we go and do our shopping. Also in the weekly planning session, you know, after we get the meal plan done, this is when I'm using the balance formula. And that is how I get it all done without losing my shit. It is my favorite system. Don't tell my other systems, but it is, you know, the most geniusy thing that I think I have created. And it all came out of that years ago struggle of how am I going to get all this done? So the balance formula is how to get everything done without losing your shit. So before we get started on this, actually, I'm going to go back. So I want you to really quick go grab your planner or calendar, whatever type you use, paper or digital. I use digital because, you know, when I started this practice, again, my kid youngest was with me, home with me, and so I needed something mobile. So if clients emailed me, I could get that email, I could schedule them right there. My calendar was with me. But I love me a paper planner. I love to open it up. I love writing in it and all the stickers and the colors and everything. So I love them, but for me, mobile is just more practical. So go grab your planner and whatever tools you use to keep track of like your must-dos and have-tos, like your to-do list. Again, for me, mine is digital, so I can have it with me. It syncs with my computer, so I have access to it wherever I need it. So go grab that, and then we'll dive into the balance formula. Okay, so the first step in kind of figuring out where you will be able to do what and when, we need to calculate your time. And so once you've done this, you don't have to do this every time you use the balance formula, but it is a important first step, because I think, you know, this is a misconception about how we're gonna prioritize and be more productive. We need to know how much time you actually have to do stuff. Maybe you don't have as much as you thought. Maybe you actually have more. So we're going to calculate time. So I want you to think about what is the latest that you can sleep in the morning and not be rushing around, losing your shit, hurting the cats, you know, AKA kids. And then what is the earliest that you should go to bed without feeling drained in the afternoon and needing some kind of caffeine boost. So I'll spare you the lecture on sleep, but as you probably know and may do, a lot of moms will sacrifice that. And they'll stay up late, you know, and not really get adequate sleep. And so it's really important. So you can even like block this out on your calendar if you want. Like, what time do I have to get up? What time do I need to go to bed? So for me right now, this phase of life, it was different when my kids were even younger. I can get up at 7, and that gives me a little bit of uninterrupted time before everybody gets up. I can get my oldest kiddo up because he goes to school first, and I can sit in bed and do the Wordle, drink a cup of coffee. Sometimes it's rushed, so I'm even thinking about getting up maybe like 15 minutes earlier. And then so that gives me some time, right, to myself in the morning. And then I know that if I go to bed somewhere between like 10:30 and 11, I'm pretty good. I'm going to get a pretty good night's sleep and you know, not, you know, feel like passing out on the couch at 8 or 9. And sometimes I can push it a little bit past 11, you know, if I'm doing stuff after the kids go to bed, getting some work done, or just hanging out with husband, I can push it a little bit, but not too many nights in a row, because then it'll catch up with me and I'm just dragging ass when I get up in the morning. So just keep this in mind. What is that time? And so I know that I have from 7 a.m. until about 10:30, and that's my time to start with. That's my foundation. So once you've calculated that, we're going to now subtract out of your time the must do's. So remember, these are the things only you can do. So when you're looking at your calendar, block out first the must do's with set times. So I block out all my therapy sessions on my calendar. That's how I keep track of them. But that's how I also know I can't do anything else during those times. I must be present. And so my time and energy in those times is devoted to those. And so, you can block out work. I also know, like the school drop off, right? I used to put that on my calendar. So I would know, like, I really can't do anything during that time. I can't answer emails. I might be able to run an errand after I drop them off, but I will, just making sure that you have all these must do's blocked out. And so after you do the ones with the set times, now we're going to block out must do's without set times. So think of your to-do list when you're looking at this coming week and you're like, I know for me, like I need to renew my driver's license. And so I must do that. Nobody can do that for me. So in this case, I would look at the week ahead and see, okay, what's a good day that I can block that out and set the intention to do it on that day. So, typically Monday afternoons, I'm done with clients at 3, and I don't have to pick anybody up from, track practice or their after school club until like 6. So, I have that opening of time there, so I can say, okay, at 3:30, I'm going to go to the BMV, and I will block that out on my calendar. And I'll show you a little trick that I do with my to-do list later. But so as you're going through first the must-dos, think about what ones you have to do for the week and pick the times, that you're going to do that, where there's an opening. And keep in mind, don't overload your schedule. 1 or 2 a day is good. So block those out. And then next, we're going to subtract out of your time the have tos. And so remember, these are things that anyone can do. And so I want to give you all the permission in the world, no guilt, no shame, in outsourcing and delegating as many of these as you can. So think of all of those things that you do that are part of that mother load, and give them to your partner. Again, no shame in like hiring a mother's helper or a babysitter so you can knock out some of these tasks. I recently hired a virtual assistant that I can outsource some of these things to. So, within my personal life, but also my business, so that I can take those things off my plate, because I'm not the one that must do them. Anyone can. And so, giving you permission to do that. When you have recurring have tos, like laundry or paying the bills, and I see a little typo there, then it can be helpful to kind of pick a day of the week that you're just always going to do these. So for me, with my finances, for the business and personal, it has just made sense from the beginning, way back in 2015 when I started my practice, to do those on Fridays. I get paid on a Friday, so I can, balance my budget and pay the bills that I have to do. So I do that every Friday morning. And so, also like for other ones like laundry, pick a day of the week that is going to make the most sense. Maybe it's, Sunday night when you guys are prepping for everything else, throw in a load of laundry so you have clothes to wear. And another thing that you can do is see, depending on your kiddos' ages, what are some of these things that they can do? And I know it's sometimes just easier to do it ourselves, but just start to kind of think about, what are some of these I can take off my plate and give to the kids or husband or someone else? So one of the little hacks that I do is on my to-do list, I use the to-do app, and I'll show you a picture later, but I have um, a list for each day of the week. So for Monday, I have a list for Tuesday. And so on my Friday list, to remind myself, I have my financial system as a to-do list item on the app. And so, if you decide, hey, um, somebody has to do the grocery shopping, I'm going to be the one to do that. So I'm going to do that on like Sunday, right? Or Friday evening when I get off work. So um, you can just set those up on whatever day you think is going to work for you. And so now we are to the want tos. Like I said, these are the most important for finding balance and being able to, prevent getting burned out by all the other things and not having any time for yourself. So we're going to treat these just like all the other to-dos. If they have a set time, block those out in your calendar now. So if you have a girls' night out scheduled or a concert or there's a yoga class you want to go to or some other class that you want to do, block that out in your calendar now, because if it's on there, we're less likely to sacrifice it for something else. It helps hold us more accountable. And if you share a calendar, then, partner sees it too. And then, you'll be setting that intention to make sure you do that. And I recommend all the moms I work with to have at least like one a week or two a week, like one or two times a week that you can do these things. So always making sure that this is a priority. And then if you have want tos without set times, go ahead and block those now. And with your visualization, you can see like maybe, oh, you know, on Tuesday evening, we don't have anything going on. Maybe I could get dinner with a friend, or go get drinks or something. Look for where those openings are that's not too overloaded. Or maybe you have a really busy couple of days and, Monday and Tuesday are busy. And so on Wednesday, you're going to give yourself some time to recharge and do something that fills your cup. So here's the screenshot of my calendar. So I color code everything. My oldest is in blue, my youngest is in red, and anything they have to do together, like the dentist, is in purple. And you can see I have everything blocked out. Green are clients. And then these kind of lavenderish ones are just other things, meetings. This is staff one-on-one. So you can see it's pretty full, but it gives me a really clear visual kind of mental picture of what my week looks like. So actually, here's that one day with the track meet. So you can see like I have a full day. That's a manageable amount of sessions. And then I have this time like when I'm done and until 6, that I can like fit in some errands after I leave the office or when I'm done with clients. I have time to like answer some emails and I'll look, on Sunday, I'll look at this and see like, do I even want to add anything here in the afternoon? Because I'm going to be gone all evening. And so maybe I don't, and I want to be able to relax. Or maybe I know this evening's kind of going to be a waste at the track. Not a waste, but I'm going to be sitting there and I'm not going to be able to do much. So maybe I will try to get some other tasky things done before I have to leave for that. So you can see I'm always kind of thinking about where am I drained? What's going to be taking up my mental energy? On a day like this, like it looks a little spaced out, but these one-on-one supervisions are kind of a lot of talking. There are a lot of brain power, helping my staff and working with them. This here is a mastermind, so a group that I'm in. So again, it's a lot of mental energy, even though, I'm kind of sitting down for a lot of this and I'm not spending a lot of physical energy, but this is a pretty full day. Here we have an after school thing, right? So I may not really put much else on my list for this Thursday. Same with Friday. That's kind of full for a Friday for me. So I may not do much after that. Or if, there's anything else that I didn't get done earlier in the week, I'm gonna maybe try to squeeze it in here Friday before everybody gets home from school. But that's the point, is I want you to kind of be thinking about, where's my mental energy at, and what's draining me, and where do I have time for what must get done, and what really needs to happen in this week. Oh, and these are our meal plan. I don't know if you can see those. Husband does not find this as entertaining as I do, but I love to put our meals as emojis. So something that also helps us plan our meals is we use themes to kind of help us decide, what are we going to make? I get tired of deciding that. So like Monday is usually meatless, and that's a little stack of pancakes. So we do like meatless Mondays or breakfast because it's easy, and everybody loves breakfast for dinner in our house. So we got pancakes. Tuesday, Taco Tuesday, of course. This week it's like grilled chicken tacos. And so I will block it out there. So again, it's part of that visual. When I look at this, I can see, oh, what are we having for dinner? And kind of know ahead of time. And when the kids ask me a million times, what's for dinner? What's for dinner? And we'll often try to combine, cook smarter rather than harder. And so like the chicken for the tacos, we're going to use later. That's an emoji for a burrito, but we're going to have chicken wraps. So the kids like those. They can help make them themselves. They're pretty easy. We've got already these after school events. And so a lot of that's prepped. So we're really thinking about, how can I help myself on this day by making dinner easier? So that's kind of a look at my schedule and where, I get that visual image. And so I was telling you, my to-do list system. So this is a little screenshot of the app. So there's a list for each day of the week. And so on Friday, I do my administrative stuff for the practice, and I do the financial things. And so I have it in there, and I will set reminders, and as I'm looking through the balance formula in my weekly planning session, I'm adding these things right then. Like, oh, I got to renew my driver's license. What's going to be a good day? And I'll put that on Monday and have it on there. So then like Sunday night, I'll probably review these again, do a little bit, kind of finalizing my weekly planning session and seeing what it's going to look like. And so the night before, all I have to do is kind of go to my list to see, what am I doing the next day? And I'll even kind of use the balance formula for a day, right? Well, when is the best time of day to, renew my license or do that laundry? And so it really just helps you plug in where you're going to get these things done. So just some tips. These are the tools that work for me. Like I said, I need things mobile. I like it digital. I want to be able to do it on my phone. So if you find the right tools for you that are going to fit your life, then it's more likely to not just find balance, but maintain it then, and be able to do this week after week. So you can play around with them. That's one of the lessons in the Burnout to Balance program, is a systems creator. So we kind of go through and figure out, what systems and tools do you need? One last thing about sleep, I'm not going to lecture you, but please don't sacrifice it, because we know that that's one of the contributors to burnout. We're already trying to do all these things, and if we're doing it on less sleep, then we're just going to be tired and cranky. And that saying, if mom's happy, nobody's happy. So do yourself a favor. Again, no guilt for outsourcing whatsoever. Those have-tos are not your must-dos. Anybody can do those. And so, taking them off your plate can almost, for some, depending on what it is, be an immediate, sigh of relief, like, oh, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And always, as a busy, overwhelmed, burned out mom, we want to start prioritizing our time, money, and energy, really starting to think about your life and how you're structuring it based on these three things is going to make a significant difference. So, I think you may have attended this because, it was free and you were hoping to get some juicy tools and ideas, and I really hope you've gotten that, because these are like practical strategies that are totally doable. I use these every week. I can feel it when I don't. I'm scattered and overwhelmed and kind of just running around like a chicken with my head cut off, not really getting anything done. And I know you want to get shit done. And so, um, another reason I think maybe that you've attended is because you're tired of feeling tired. You know, I know I have a lot of mom clients who like they go 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 and then they get sick. And then their body's just like, nope, we got to shut you down, and the only way we can do that is with a sinus infection, or with a cold, and that depleted immune system. I also know, because I've been there, that motherhood can be really lonely, and I hope that you've gained from this workshop that you're not alone, that there are a lot of moms out there. Over 60% of moms feel overwhelmed and burned out, right? So you're not alone, and I want to be this beacon of hope and show you from my own example that it doesn't have to be this way, right? We don't have to just survive. You can find and maintain balance and thrive and feel really good about yourself and your parenting and be connected in your relationships. It doesn't have to be you don't have to feel so bad. And so that leads me to that question, right? Can moms really do it all? And I say yes. As I mentioned, yes, we can. But we cannot do it based on those unrealistic expectations that society puts on us. We cannot check off those boxes that other people define for us. When we define it for ourselves and say yes to this and no to that based on what is important to us, and then we can do it all, and we can feel good. And that's the whole point of the Burnout to Balance program. So if you're still with me, I'm going to share a little bit about that. So it is an 8-week online group program for burned out moms to help you with all the things I've been discussing today. It dives deeper into the mindset work and creating those systems and tools that are going to work for you. They may not work for the next mom, but when you take that ownership and really prioritize yourself and how you want to spend your time, money, and energy, then it can work. And so that's why I created this program to help other moms with tools and lessons and videos that are designed for moms just like you. The program is made up of 3 modules. We talk about the mindset stuff so that you can stop beating yourself up and unburden from that doubt and those unrealistic expectations. And then we go into like the balanced life. So we kind of get rid of those things that are draining you and no longer serving you, that you can, say no to, but haven't because you've maybe felt guilty or thought you should say yes to these things as a mom. And we kind of set boundaries around, your time, money, and energy to balance out all those to-dos. And then we create those systems personalized just for you so you can actually get done the shit that you want and need to get done. So the program is broken down into 6 lessons in those 3 modules, 2 lessons a module. There are videos, worksheets. I try to keep the videos pretty short. So, you're not listening to an hour long, because I know that you're a busy mom and you don't have time for that. And I wanted to make this very digestible and easy to do because I know you're busy. And then there are 4 live coaching calls with all the other participants in the program to connect, ask any questions of me, kind of coach you and teach you on the lessons that are coming up. You get that accountability and encouragement. And then throughout the whole program, you have access to a group chat where you can, again, get that connection and encouragement from the other participants, but also get real-time advice from me if you're stuck on something. So I wanted to share just a little bit from other moms who have gone through the program. This is Mallory. She's also a therapist and a mom, and she really struggled with like that organization and routine, balancing like with her work to get all those tasky things done, and not feel distracted and overwhelmed when she's trying to hang out with her kids. So, she really found that balance between the two so that she could take more control over her time and energy. And there's also Sarah. I love this picture of Sarah. I wish I had that background. But Sarah was kind of the same. She's a photographer, has her own business, but also, the number one in the house for taking care of everything, bearing that mother load. And so she was kind of the same, really struggled with like saying yes too much and prioritizing the kids over herself and feeling a little disorganized in how she structured her time around her business. She didn't have a lot of systems in place and was kind of spinning her wheels on the to-do list. They say when everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, right? And so nothing gets done. And so she really found that helpful in being able to balance those two. So this burnout to balance, if you think about like all the lessons and the goodness that I throw into it, it's really a high value product. I've put all of my therapist and mom knowledge and experience into it. And so for you all today, the total price is typically the $14.97, but with having attended the workshop, you get the bonus price reduced. And so if you sign up for it after having attended this workshop, then you get the reduced price. Just as a way to say thank you again for being here and for sharing your time with me. I really wanted to respect that and honor that because I know we don't have a lot of time, and I've done programs and downloaded guides and attended workshops, just still kind of feeling like I was doing something wrong, or man, this stuff's great, but how am I going to implement it? And not really feeling like they were sharing that strategy. So I wanted to make sure that I'm providing that value and really speaking to the overwhelmed mom that I used to be and what worked for me. So if you're interested in the program, next steps would be going to this page here. That's the sign up page. You can go and read more about it, learn more about me, walk through, what the steps are going to look like, and save your spot. And so now I'm going to turn it over to you all and answer any questions that you have, whether it's about any of the systems that I talked about today, how I do it in my life. Because like I said, I walk this talk. I use these systems every week, each day. And I have, for almost 10 years now. So they really do work. So let me know what questions that you have.